means that mental health isn't binary, right? We need to start to think about it outside of this sick versus well, right? Everyone's got a cardiovascular system. It doesn't mean everyone has heart disease. So similar logic, mental health it's a dimension of human functioning on a spectrum. It means that we can feel all of the feels, but it also means that it fluctuates and it's impacted by things like stress and sleep and nutrition and purpose and relationships. These are the things that move you up and down that spectrum constantly. And that's also the beauty of life and how it builds perseverance and resiliency. So in practice, for me, what that means is that I want people to stop waiting for a crisis to pay attention to their mental health and to really think about maintenance as medicine.
Hi, I'm Lauren Parsons.
And I'm Andy Jackson, and this is the All Well Co podcast.
Dive deep with us as leading experts share their unique perspectives on topics such as recovery, sleep, movement, and the latest innovations in the space.
So welcome to the All Well Co podcast, Dr. Appasani. We're excited to have you on here. Thank you for joining us. For people who don't know you, what are you obsessed with? What problem are you solving right now?
It's a really great question. The biggest obsession I have really is around the idea of community, right? I think that we're becoming more and more disconnected with technology, with living in isolation, with families starting later in life, et cetera, all of these things. Historically, we saw it as urbanization. But I really think what's happening with this is that we are starting to learn sophisticated language around mental health. So people start to say, I'm starting to feel anxious, or my nervous system is not regulated. I'm suffering with burnout. Yet the outcomes continue to get worse and not better despite having the language. And so I'm really obsessed with this idea about how can we value things like biohacking and innovation in medicine and longevity in healthcare, but really tap into what I think is real longevity, which is community and relations and relationships with the self and with others, and integrate that all in to the piece. So that's sort of my obsession right now is
Yeah.
taking ancient wisdom of what works for health and well-being with the novel therapies and modalities that are coming out now.
I love that. I love that community.
Yeah,
What a
yeah,
nice way to frame
absolutely.
mental health and just the way that we need to
Yeah, absolutely.
maybe view our world. Was there a moment in your life that made you decide mental health would be your life's work?
Yeah, I love that question. It's sort of like, what was the instinct to get into mental health or get into psychiatry? And it wasn't really a moment, right? It's an accumulation of like witnessing my own life and what's around me. And so, I grew up, my family's originally from India. I was born and raised in the Boston area in Massachusetts. So I was really kind of like straddling between these two cultures. And I watched people within my family, my parents who immigrated, the community that they were surrounded by, carrying this almost like psychological weight in total silence, right? They didn't have the language or the literacy around describing what's happening to their nervous system. Um, and then when I started to practice in medicine, I saw so many people just like falling through the cracks. And it's not because we don't care in the system, but it's that the Western system is really designed to treat episodes, right? Not people.
Mm.
And so for me, particularly, I have a specialty in addiction psychiatry as well. Unfortunately, I had a few friends growing up in high school and college that lost their lives to substance use disorder and mental health. And that's really what really broke me open. You can't really sit across the table from somebody who's in the grip of a substance use disorder and think that it's just a simple cause and effect.
Mm.
And so for me, it really brought the pieces together of trauma and culture and biology and family systems and economics, and all of that is in the room with you. And that's really when I knew and I felt this fire within me, like this is the work for me to do. The selfish ability for myself to be in intimate moments with people and be a sliver on their journey of potentially healing.
That's awesome.
Mm.
Yeah. One of the reasons I'm really excited to talk to you today is that you bridge Eastern and Western medicine. Was that intentional or is that something you grew into?
Yeah, I don't really know if it's intentional.
Yeah.
The bridging of Eastern and Western medicine, right? I think it's more the sense that it comes back to what I said earlier about kind of growing up being straddled between two cultures, right? The American Western culture and the culture of South Asia and India in particular that my parents brought, and I was raised in that community as well, and always thinking about where do I sit within this. And so there's practices, that my mother did. Every morning we had, like a little hot beverage of turmeric with ginger and honey and black pepper. And then I moved to Los Angeles in my 20s, and I was like, oh, this actually costs like $20 at Erewhon for a shot. But
Uh-huh.
there's things that I just grew up with that were second nature, these Ayurvedic practices, that were just kind of intrinsic to me, right? And then with my nonprofit, the Minds Foundation, that works to increase mental health literacy and access to care in India, yoga, it was just a daily thing that people did in these communities. It wasn't like you go to, Core Power or hot yoga and work out for an hour. It was just this practice of union of the breath and with prana. And that was a contemplative tradition. And so some of these frameworks are a bit more embodied in my own DNA and how I grew up. And so when I went into traditional Western medical training, I was able to just bring that into the lens. And so it just, at the end of the day, comes back to what you asked me earlier about what am I obsessed with now. And the obsession is, how do we get people to really connect with their true selves again and be comfortable with that? And these are the types of practices that we can do that. There's a role for medication, for sure, but there's a role for meditation as well.
It's really interesting you chat about that. Yesterday, Japan played England in soccer in the UK, and it's all over the internet today. At the end of the game, all the Japanese fans stopped and picked up all the trash off the ground before they left the ground. All the English fans just left and left all the trash there. And seeing this is a cultural thing that's there. So I think that blend of whether it be good manners, whether it be looking after the environment, whether it be mental health, I think that blend of East and West is really, really fascinating for me.
Mm.
Yeah.
That was I was watching it today just going, wow, that is such good practice to teach our kids. Pick
Hmm.
up your trash before you go. It's not down to the people who work there to pick up your trash
Yeah,
afterwards.
fair.
Seems so basic, but
It does, yeah,
But
respect.
it's the basic stuff that helps us, right? And I think
Right.
that when you respect your environment and others, it does help your own personal mental health. And it's funny
Yeah.
you brought up Japan. I actually had an opportunity to to trek the Kimono Kodo Trail in Japan back in December,
oh wow.
and it was pretty incredible, just the spiritual energy of that and the wisdom that nature holds for us. And talk about treatment for mental health, right? Like that
Yeah.
is, if you really respect your ecosystem, it's going to give back to you what you need.
Yeah.
Well, let's just pick up on that. So you said that, I've read that everyone has mental health. So what does that actually mean in practice?
Means that mental health isn't binary, right? We need to start to think about it outside of this sick versus well, right? Everyone's got a cardiovascular system. It doesn't mean everyone has heart disease. So similar logic,
Mm.
mental health it's a dimension of human functioning on a spectrum. It means that we can feel all of the feels, but it also means that it fluctuates and it's impacted by things like stress and sleep and nutrition and purpose and relationships. These are the things that move you up and down that spectrum constantly. And that's also the beauty of life and how it builds perseverance and resiliency. So in practice, for me, what that means is that I want people to stop waiting for a crisis to pay attention to their mental health and to really
Mm.
think about maintenance as medicine.
Love that maintenance of medicine.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's
So
like working out,
it
right? A
is,
little
it's like
bit.
working
Yeah.
out. It's the
Yeah.
same sort of
Yeah.
idea. So what do most people misunderstand about anxiety, depression, burnout?
Um, yeah, anxiety, depression, burnout are interesting. When it comes to mental health, those are probably the three that we really think about the most in terms of the general conversation. And I would say a big misunderstanding, and this has been shifting, is that they're chemical imbalances or brain disorders that need to be corrected. Whether it's through a medication, a peptide, or getting in the sauna, there's no sort of cause and effect type of thing or silver bullet solution. So it's important, to think outside this fragment of the picture. And so when I think about it clinically, I think about these things, anxiety, depression, burnout, fatigue, as intelligent signals. It's your organism, it's your body telling you something. It's a message to tune into, right? That something is fundamentally misaligned. It could be due to like, unresolved grief. It could be due to a relational rupture or life events. But something is not matching up between your body and the life that you're living and maybe the values that you hold. And so when we rush to suppress signals without reading that message, you might get some short-term relief, but you're leading to long-term stagnation and chronic stress on your system. And so the question I try to ask myself with this is like, and I ask my patients this is, what is the symptom you're protecting from having right now?
Mm, interesting. What
And
about a step
do
down
you
f
want to change or not?
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably the most important, right?
Right?
Um, what about a step down from that? So maybe it's not full on anxiety, maybe it's not full on burnout, but if someone's feeling off
Hmm.
and is not necessarily diagnosable, what do you think is actually going on biologically, psychologically? What's going on there?
So it's like it's a bit of a gray zone, right? And I think
Yeah,
also where I think most people live. There's
yeah,
this sort of like sub-threshold suffering that's real suffering. We're seeing a lot more of it these days. It's sort of this idea that humans are, I mean, given the state of the world and ecosystem, maybe most organisms are living in a chronic low grade, like stress activated response. And there's a lot of cortisol dysregulation, sleep disruption, inflammation that's going on. But it's not enough where it's like diagnosable.
yeah.
But what does that mean? That doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you don't start doing things to help yourself. And so it really means that psychologically you might be depleted, emotional debt is building up and it's you're not paying it down by taking care of it. So for me, the clinical intuition is to say, hey, you might not have like a quote diagnosable, reimbursable thing that we can bill, but let's be attuned to what's happening. Why are you feeling off? This is the earliest signal for you that your body is telling you. It's your own inner wisdom and systemic intelligence that your system is drifting off. So this is your nervous system giving you a memo. Are you ready to read it now, or do you want to wait till you're in crisis?
Mhm. You mentioned cortisol, which I think is really interesting. Um, what are some ways we can help regulate cortisol, right? Because it could get to a certain level and you're just so dysfunctional with it.
Uh-huh.
Um, what are some ways that we could help ourselves?
Give each other a hug.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. That's so sweet.
Honestly, like think about what happens when there's human touch,
Yeah,
and you give each other a hug or a handshake and eye contact, like the oxytocin release from that, the dopamine release from that, that is so powerful
yeah,
and it's incredible, right? And that's simple. Sharing a meal with someone. The other thing that you can do that's completely free, you don't need an app for it, you don't have to go into a studio for it, is just to take a couple of deep breaths and relax into it and regain your presence. I mean, these are our body has these systems already built into it. We really just lost disconnection.
yeah,
Um, right. Other things you can do, obviously, that are a little bit more involved is looking at your diet and your nutrition and seeing, are you eating foods that your body's actually attuned to and can process well, or are they things that are inflammatory and they're causing more stress and cortisol increase? And the key thing, really, like sleep, that is like the biggest pillar for health, in my opinion.
yeah. Where do you think modern psychiatry gets all of this wrong?
Um, I love the field, but I have some genuine critiques of it. So modern psychiatry is really good at categorizing and labeling, and even at pharmacology to a degree. Where it gets things wrong is that it's underinvesting in context of suffering, right? So DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual that's used in many places for diagnosing folks, is there's no code for the idea of living in a fragmented community with no sense of purpose and a childhood that might have been defined by emotional neglect. Like that's not there. But that's what we're really treating when we're working with someone. We've developed this model in modern and Western psychiatry in particular that's very service delivery, rewarding symptom management, and maybe even volume in some types of clinics. but we're not really looking at real healing, longevity, restoration. And so these 15 to 20-minute appointments, they might help solve an acute crisis, but they're not really looking at restoring an entire human being. And that's where I think the field needs to really go.
And okay, so I've got this right, is that you believe in a practice called integrative psychiatry. So what is that?
Uh, what it looks like for me practically is I spend more time with people. I meet them where they're at. Some people have had bad experiences in the healthcare system. They don't want to see me in a clinic. So let's go to your house. Let's go on a hike. Let's meet somewhere you feel safe and comfortable. Because once you feel safe and comfortable, then you're more open to speaking about what's going on. Your nervous system regulates, your cortisol regulates, and now we can start a real relationship. So when I first meet someone, I want to know about their sleep, their movement, what they eat, what they think. Let's go through the pantry together. Maybe the next appointment, we're going to check out a farmer's market together and see what's going on. What's your trauma history broadly defined? And then specifically, like, what is your relationship to meaning and purpose and spirituality? Like, what does that mean to you, especially in modern day society? Um, what is spirituality for you? What do you believe in, right? What's your family system like, your work environment? And most importantly, what's your relationship to yourself and to others? And what I'm trying to get at here, right, is that I'm building a map of their whole ecology of a person's life before we're even thinking about a diagnosis or an intervention. And sometimes medication might be a part of that, but we have to think about contemplative practices, body work practices, nutrition practices, and most importantly, community interventions and engaging in things that they enjoy. So it's more of a pro wholeness approach, is how I would maybe call it.
Mm.
Oh, okay. So it's a holistic approach looking at their whole life, and then
Yeah.
basically you're meeting them where they are rather than
Mhm.
having to come into a clinical office or practice, etc. Is that a fair way
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
summarizing it?
Yeah, for sure. And I have that opportunity. They can come into to the office if they want, but you have a 16-year-old. It's kind of nice to get them walking outside without their phone in their hand and they're
Yeah,
side by side,
absolutely.
not having to look at you directly, more comfortable talking, right? I mean,
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
of us might be.
Yeah.
No, I actually, totally. I mean, you think about it. You have some of your best conversations when you're out on a hike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're out hiking or you're walking. You're in nature. You're more relaxed. You have a good conversation. So you started to touch on this in your list of things that you look at within that philosophy. So how
Mhm.
do nutrition, lifestyle, and environment basically play into your mental health versus medication?
Yeah, I'll answer this by actually giving an example of my own life, right? So I've struggled with anxiety and bouts of depression, particularly in COVID. It was really intense. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I was in the middle of residency at a major county hospital system, and the burnout and the depression was very significant, to the point of some intermittent, suicidal thoughts and so forth. For me, my community was critical. But what my community did for me is that they knew that I always tend to do better if I'm out in nature. So they showed up and they got me into the forest and onto the hikes and onto the beach. And that is so powerful for me as a person to heal. And we know there's science behind this, right? There's the idea of Shinrin-ryoku, of forest bathing in Japan. There's countries like Sweden that you can actually prescribe getting into nature as a benefit. And so we know there's evidence around this, and they're not just secondary factors, they're really foundational. And on top of this, we know there's clear relationships between the gut and the brain, and what you eat will impact how you feel. Chronic inflammation can be treated by changing diet and lifestyle. For example, the Mediterranean diet does help a lot with depression and anxiety as sort of a generalized diet plan. And then we know sleep, right? Sleep deprivation impacts your executive functioning, specifically prefrontal cortex functioning. And
Mhm.
that can mimic a psychiatric illness if you have sleep deprivation. So those are all really important. And there's other factors in the environment, like I've gotten this obsession recently with AQI, air quality index, as
Uh-huh.
well, and looking at AQI a lot, but also, microplastics, for example, environmental chaos, digital overstimulation, social fragmentation, all of these increased threat response. So we can treat some stuff with medication, but what I'm saying is medication on top of a destabilized foundation, it's kind of like you're patching this leaky roof without fixing the drainage, and you're going to just be patching forever. And so when I speak to patients, I say, we determine how bad is the suffering. Like, these tools that work, the yoga, the family dinners, getting out into nature. But are you stuck on an island right now and you need a little bit of medication to get you across the bridge back to those practices? Or can you see them and you're just on the sand on the beach and you can get back to it, right? So we determine where you are in that spectrum. And that's why it's so important to think about things like lifestyle and relationships and environment and nutrition, because those are the core factors that move away from treating the acute crisis to the actual whole person and longevity of their health.
Yeah. And you started to hint on it, excuse me, but when should someone consider medication versus other interventions? You started to mention it there.
Yeah, I think when symptoms are severe enough, right, that they're impairing their functioning and it's making it impossible for other interventions to even take hold. Um, I think the person is like, if they're so depressed they can't get out of bed, I'm not going to say, hey, let's get you meditating every day. Right? It's just, it's very hard. Like, what is that potential to kinetic energy conversion, and where do they sit in that spectrum? Like,
Okay.
what can they actually get done that day? And when you're stuck in a deep, dark well, how far is the light from your visual field? If you can't see it at all, you might need some medication to just increase your baseline functioning a little bit to get you a little bit closer. So I think the mistake that we hold right now culturally is that there's extremes to you do take medication or you don't take medication. But
Yeah.
pragmatically, what I try to ask is like, what does this person need right now to get some traction?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
The jump start, right? The little
Yeah.
burst maybe. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
makes a lot of
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because like you can be laying there with your phone next to you and you have a desire to call a friend, but that could feel like the hardest task that you've ever had to accomplish.
Mhm.
I mean, what do you mean? Somebody actually would call someone rather than text? Does that still exist?
Oh gosh.
We
It's
need to
funny,
get
I was like, I think telephone calls are getting like the fax now.
Are they?
Even
Oh, that's
even
so
even my wife
sad.
today had to do something, some piece of admin or whatever, and she said, "Would you believe it? They need me to fax this document." She goes, "How do I do that?" She had to pay $5.99 to get a week's lot of faxing to send a fax.
That's
I
so
always
funny.
think like,
Who still uses fax is doctors.
yeah, well, I think
Yeah.
that's what it was. I think it was something
Yeah.
to do with that. But yeah, like picking up the phone and talking to someone. Why would you do
I
that?
I love phone calls and voice notes. The texting is just getting like way too much.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm starting to get that way too, where I'm like typing out this message. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna call or I'm just
Mhm.
gonna send a voice
yeah.
note because it's just
It's even like Teams or Zoom calls, etc. Everyone feels you have to have a Teams call, and I'm like, no, no, I'll just actually call you on the telephone.
yeah.
Don't worry, we don't need to do
Yeah.
this 30-minute meeting presentation. I'm going to call you. It's going to take 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's such a good point. You've really
Exactly. And
gotten
you know
into that.
what's cool about that is like they're paying attention to you
Yeah.
and you can pick up on emotional attunement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. What do you think one thing or one lever um people could pull that's maybe super overlooked that would immediately improve mental health?
Sleep,
Yeah.
hands down.
I just said going out into nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, sleep,
Yeah. Going out in nature too, but sleep.
sleep in nature.
Sleep in
Yep.
nature. There you
Yep.
go.
And
Yeah,
it, it's sleep is amazing. I mean, there's science around this, right? Actually, like during deep sleep, your lymphatic system literally clears metabolic waste
Yeah.
from the brain, right? Your
I heard.
memory consolidates, your emotions consolidate, your threat response collaborates, recollaborates, sorry, and it's just a precondition for everything. Like if you have I mean, think about a night that you just didn't sleep well, your whole next day is kind of like off.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna mention, so, my son's now 1, but the first
Oh
4
my
months
gosh.
was like Navy SEAL training, and when you said that sleep deprivation could mimic, like, a disorder, oh my gosh, I feel that. I felt insane.
Yeah,
I've and,
yeah.
you know, I didn't sleep for 4 months, I felt insane. So
Yes,
it's
you gotta stop romanticizing, like, hustle culture as a badge of seriousness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I wanna just change it up a little bit, because I know you've got a lot of interest and there's a lot of buzz around psychedelics. So what's real versus hype?
What is real versus hype in psychedelics?
Yeah,
Well,
it's within your field.
psychedelics are ancient medicines. They've been around way longer than we have, so they're definitely real. Um, and I think to put the research to it, there's been research done, decades ago and more recently in the past 20 years. Um, the practical thing is we have really great data around the fact that psilocybin assisted therapy and MDMA assisted therapy have shown real clinical results for things like PTSD, smoking cessation, and some other mental health conditions as well. So, you know, and I don't know how familiar you are with the way they work, but just the temporary loosening of that tightness of your neurological pathway allows people to actually access these neurocritical windows, we call them, where they can really tap into emotional states and memories and look at it from a different vantage point and perspective. And so much healing can happen there. Where I think the hype comes in is that just like everything else in Western medicine and culture, people think it might be a silver bullet
mm,
to treating something. And um, that's not what it is, right? It's just another tool in the toolkit and the scaffolding of your set and your setting and your integration work and your environment and the foundation that you have going into it is really what's going to make it. And the molecule is just like the window into it, right? Aldous Huxley wrote that book, The Doors of Perception, right? So the psychedelic or the molecule is just like opening the door,
mm,
and you still have to go on that journey.
and do all the work. Yeah.
It's all work.
Yeah, so I wonder if you could just maybe pick a couple of the psychedelics and these therapies and who they actually for, and then potentially who should avoid them.
Yeah, definitely not for everyone, right? I think that from my perspective, good candidates are people that might have some what we would say treatment resistant conditions, even having done meaningful therapeutic work, perhaps medication and clinical support, and they're just still really struggling. I think there's also a second category of people where they're doing really well to a degree, but they want to find purpose and meaning at a deeper level, or get a bit more connected with their own internal spirituality or inner wisdom, and more for like performance or growth, like inner growth, right? That would be really amazing for them as well. I would say that it should be someone who has a strong therapeutic relationship with someone, not to just go off and do it with someone new. It's one of the downsides that I find with more of the retreats where you kind of go for a week and you do that, and the clinical oversight is a mixed bag. You're in a new environment, you're with people that you don't know. That's not really setting you up for
This is sort of like the ayahuasca type camps. Is that
yeah,
what we're talking
that, or
about?
if you go to Costa Rica or South America and,
Mhm.
it's just you're out of your element. So again, it comes back to what I said earlier, right? About step number 1 is making sure that you're in a place that you feel safe and comfortable so you can be vulnerable. People that should really, approach with significant caution is if there's a family or personal history of psychosis or bipolar, active substance use disorders, for example, and someone who just doesn't have the support. So they might not have a therapist or a good community to lean into on the other side of the work. So really think about being on the path of doing the work and then, hey, is this maybe an option for me?
Got it.
Mm.
Other than the silver bullet piece you mentioned, is there another big misconception people have about these treatments?
I think that's really one of the big ones, right? Is that the
Yeah.
experience itself is not a treatment, and people think that it is. It's a doorway, and the work, the heavy lifting, really comes afterwards, like about how you integrate back into your world and your relationships. Like, what are you taking into your daily practice that you've learned? I've seen people that have had really profound experiences on psychedelics, and I've seen some people that haven't had anything change. And I've also seen people have really difficult and disorienting experiences, and they have to do some serious work the months after. It doesn't mean that it was a bad experience, but it was very challenging. and the work is coming now. It's almost like you're opening the dam to the floodgates. And so you want to make sure you have a scaffold there to catch you, and that you're willing to climb through it.
Yeah, that's good advice. I wanna, talk about some maybe practical tools for people
Mhm.
listening. So if someone, listening feels overwhelmed, what's a simple starting point for them?
Yeah, I mean, I felt overwhelmed before in my own life.
Mhm.
Um,
Same.
this is
I know
yeah,
that feeling today.
Yeah, yeah,
this is simple, but it might feel difficult sometimes. So it's important to narrow in, right? So narrow your time horizon. Think about, overwhelm comes from thinking about the future a lot and sort of getting stuck in that. And it's your body holding like tomorrow's problems and too many of tomorrow's problems or potential problems. So, you know, ask yourself right now, can I get present to the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Not the next year of my life. Not a problem I don't even know how to solve yet. But right now, what am I required to do in the next 10 minutes? And pair that with a long exhale. Activate your parasympathetic nervous system to relax. You don't need an app, by the way, right? So, quick breathing exercise and just try to tune into the next 5 to 10 minutes. And it's just kind of breaking things down a little bit. And, anxiety and overwhelm it really does come from just like getting tripped up and thinking about the future too much.
yeah.
Let's go the other way. So what does a mentally healthy day actually look like?
For me, is moving my body, protecting my sleep, drinking water. Um, It's really the water thing's interesting. A lot of my female friends in particular always forget to drink water.
Man, you're calling me out right now.
I'm
Oh, my
sorry. I
father.
gotta gift everyone the Stanley Cups, I guess.
Maybe. Yeah, and then they just look nice, so you forget you have to actually drink out of them.
Yeah, and I think what I've heard from some of them is like, "Oh, well, I realize it's like when I have kids and work and all these things, I just, like, forget." Um, or like, I don't wanna have to stop to go to the bathroom. So, for me, it's like moving my body, protecting my sleep. And a huge thing for me is like I gotta talk to a friend or like see a friend or something, a phone call, whatever it is. And then something to get me grounded again, whether it's a meditation or time in nature. It just is really important for me. Otherwise, I will self isolate myself. And so genuine moments of rest without digital devices for actual recovery. Uh, and Andy, I also want to say, because you asked the question, a mentally healthy day isn't a perfect day.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just a day where I've actually taken care of my nervous system.
No, it's a really interesting one that you just mentioned there because there's obviously a lot of talk out there about young men and isolation and in the basements and etc. And that going hanging out with friends, I'm not of that generation, but it's the same thing. If I don't have my golf booked or my go to see football or whatever, even if it's only 2 weeks away, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm itching. When's the next time that I've got this there? It actually does make me a little bit stressed that this time of year is great because the weather gets good here. I know
Mhm.
every week we're gonna be playing golf, and I'm into that routine, and that's enough. And it's the same 3 or 4 friends that I'm doing it with. I don't need 30 friends or 40 friends. It's the same 4 or 5. No, that's yeah, I couldn't concur more. So
Yeah,
other
it's interesting. I was just gonna say, I had this experience this past year of making another male friend, right, in our 30s. And it was really funny because I had met his fiance first through the therapy space, and then him and I connected. I remember he texted me, he's like, "Hey man, so I'm teaching this yoga class, but like I'll be in the city. Do you want to get brunch after?" And then we did that. And then the next, after that, he's like, "Hey, I really want to take you on this awesome hike that I grew up going to." And it's almost like you're like dating as in a,
Mhm.
which is
It's a
brilliant, and everyone feels
yeah.
uncomfortable and thinks there's gotta be some sort of sexual connotation or something
no, but
weird
it's
about it, and
cool.
it's
Now
not at all.
we
Yeah.
hang out. We're starting a men's group together. Like,
Women are better at that than men, I have to say. Women are a lot better at that than we are. So, okay,
yeah.
so you maybe answered one of these things, but are there 2 to 3 habits that have kinda outsized impact on mental health?
Yeah, sleep. I keep coming back to it because it's such a pillar. And with sleep comes consistent wake time as much as you can. Anchoring your circadian rhythm helps you with your mood and your energy and your stress hormones, right? It helps the cortisol know what's going on, when to spike and when not to. Um, in morning sunlight, usually I try to get out there right after I have some water. I get out there and I try to go get a cup of coffee and just be outside, no sunglasses. Um, and honestly, I would say one of the biggest things is genuine social connection, not digital contact, but being in the embodied presence of another human being, especially in the world of AI. I wrote a piece recently on my Substack about how I believe that AI will never achieve attunement, because attunement actually means that you need two organisms that are vibing off of each other's hormones and mirror neurons and emotional states. And so I think that it's more important than ever to try to be within physical presence of another human being. And that can really help combat this epidemic of loneliness that's being accelerated by tech. So humans are wired for co-regulation as well. So if it's two to three things to just help mental health, I would just say sleep, morning sunlight, and exposure to nature, and the biggest one, just human connection.
So you mean I shouldn't go and talk to AI because it says to me, "That's a really good question. I'm glad you asked me that." You mean I shouldn't get that every day from it? Just ask it questions so it talks to me nicely?
Constantly validate you.
Yeah, I
But
know.
but
I think
growth
it's
doesn't come from validation, it comes from being challenged.
yeah, fair, great point. Is that so those 2 to 3 things, would those be the same things you would recommend? We wanna be resilient, right? Resilient is such a great word.
Mm.
I think, it's super for counteracting cortisol. It's how do we how do we become resilient? Are those 2 to 3 things what you would recommend in this kind of chaotic world we're in?
Yeah. It how do you build resilience is a really it's an interesting topic. I've been starting to think about resilience and perseverance as almost two separate things. Like resilience now I'm starting to think about it more as like survival. Like what do you need for your body to survive? And perseverance as that extra bump or catalyst of like the drive, the intrinsic motivation, like the perseverance to climb a mountain so you can get that level of satisfaction and build grit. So I think the biggest key to building resilience is actually stop trying to eliminate the chaos and start actually focusing on building your capacity to tolerate it instead.
Mm,
And that it's not the absence of stress, it's your robustness of recovery from that stress. So it
okay.
means that you have practices that are non-negotiable when things get hard, not when they're easy. It means you're investing in relationships before you need them. It means you develop a relationship with uncertainty that is not a threat, but curiosity. So you're not scared when it happens, right? So, and the last thing, because I keep repeating the same core pillars, right, is like resilience is deeply relational.
Yeah,
We know that the strongest predictor of resilience in humans is the quality of the relationships that they have.
yeah.
You can't do it alone.
Someone said to me recently, and tell me what you think about this, is that in regards to grief, it's not. They said something to the effect of like, it's not necessarily that grief gets smaller after you suffer a loss of someone or a pet. It's that kind of your world around you gets bigger,
Yeah.
and so it doesn't seem as large. What do you think about that saying?
Yeah. I believe it, and
Yeah.
the reason that I do is, I yeah, I mean, okay, in the past year, my father, who was very healthy, had a medical adverse effect happen that completely transformed his life at, mid-60s, pretty young guy. A few months later, I lost my uncle who raised me as a kid in a traumatic car accident. And so I would say the past year has felt like I'm just getting hit by rocks
Oh,
constantly.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear
Thank you.
that.
I appreciate it. And I share all this because there's a lot of emotions, right? There's anger at what happened, there's grief, but there's also a resilience and there's a tuning into myself about what are my values? What do I want in my life? Who do I want to spend time with? What does life mean? And I think a level of resilience that builds for me within that. And I think that, and I've always respected people who've been through hard things and have had to work through grief. Because when you work through grief, it means that you can experience real human emotions. And it means that you're really attuned to being able to understand other humans and connect at a deeper level, and that you don't take things for granted. Um, and in that way, when you get that perspective, it does make your world bigger.
Yeah, sure. I like that answer. You've been
Good.
across the world. You've and not that it matters that I like your answer, but I liked it.
No, like it,
Yeah, it's not gonna
She's
change your day.
AI.
Yeah,
She's not real.
yeah, yeah. Oh, man. I didn't no. Um, you've done a lot with Eastern, Western,
Mhm.
you've been all over the world. What do you think as a Western culture, society, we're missing?
yeah, we're missing community, we're missing belonging, we're missing value of intergenerational connection, right? I wouldn't say just Western anymore. I would say places that have become industrialized,
Sure.
right? So, I would
Sure.
say even a city like Delhi or Mumbai has become very industrialized and urbanized. And what that means is people start to live in smaller family systems or alone. Um, what I see a lot in these other countries where I've had an opportunity to work, whether it's in South Asia or other, even interacting with indigenous populations and communities, is that they value the collective a lot. They value this idea of unified consciousness. And it means that you heal together, right? So we start to think about community, we start to think about ancestors, versus this individualistic model of one person, one therapist, one medication. And then we get surprised at why they're not improving and they're still like suffering from fundamental social and relational wounds. So that has informed my personal practice a lot, even on how I practice now. If someone reaches out to me for care, I ask them about who their community and their family system is. And oftentimes, one of the first exercises we do is map a family tree and look at how did this person, Uncle Joe and 2 generations ago, deal with stress? Was there anxiety there? Oh, wow, that's why you're carrying it because it got passed down. It's actually not your fault or a weakness. It's that this is all connected, right? So bringing that perspective in is so critical, and we miss that here oftentimes.
Sure. So it's interesting. It seems to me you blend Eastern and Western approaches, and they seem to differ in how they view suffering and healing, etc. So, what does a mentally healthy society look like in 10 to 20 years for you?
10 to 20 years. What does it look like to be a mentally healthy society?
Yeah, taking it together, putting it all together with your Eastern and Western philosophy on
Yeah.
suffering and
Yeah.
healing. What does it look like?
It's one in which we start to think about mental health as equally as serious and culturally as serious as physical health, right? Prevention's not the norm, and not the exception either. So it's kind of that we are integrating communities, workplaces, digital environments, and thinking about psychological well-being as a scaffold across that entire spectrum, across any environment, and start to think about well-being as a start rather than patching it after harm, right? So what I said earlier about let's stop trying to treat in crisis and try to treat ahead of time, build the relationships ahead of time, teach kids in school on having a community around them, about being able to talk about what they're feeling, and especially teaching them emotional literacy, give them the vocabulary to explain what's happening to their internal nervous system. And honestly, I think that um, in 10 to 20 years, what I hope for the most is that we've relearned how to be bored and how to tolerate that space so that
Fair.
we get
Let's
creative.
read the cereal box again, right, for
Yeah.
breakfast?
Yeah, like just get bored. And that allows for connection and creativity and rest. And um, that's it.
Especially with kids,
Because,
right?
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
kids, we
well,
feel like we have to take up every minute of their day nowadays. They have
Yeah,
to be doing
all
an
the
activity all the
activities.
time.
Yeah,
because with everything going on, it's like, the thing that's being commoditized right now is our attention.
yeah,
That's what we need to take back. If we can take our attention back, we can be bored and we can start creating again.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
That's a great one. What's something you do personally to stay grounded? And if you could give everyone a piece of advice, what would it
What
be?
do I do? Well, I went to therapy yesterday. That was wonderful, but not everyone has access to that. So, simple things. I meditate on a daily basis and I make a phone call to a friend on a daily basis. Is those are two non-negotiables for me. And it's not because it always feels good. Sometimes when I meditate, it surfaces some challenging stuff, but it's probably challenging stuff I've been avoiding, and it's exactly what I need to be paying attention to. And yeah, that's it. And spending time
Yeah,
with people I love. Not productive time, not labeling it as like a time block, but just time.
Well, this has really been a fascinating conversation.
it
So,
has.
where can people learn more about you, go deeper with your work? How can they interact with you?
Yeah. So I'm getting better at writing consistently on my Substack.
Okay.
So it's drragu.substack.com. I'm trying to think a
We'll
lot
get
of
it up in the notes so
yeah,
people
Sure.
can get it.
my
Yeah.
ideas around psychiatry and philosophy and integrative health and just human connection. And on Instagram as well. It's at Rapasani. And just yeah, message me anytime. I love to talk to people, and I'm working on actually developing a podcast called How to Human, and thinking about stories of
Cool.
How to
resilience and
human.
Yeah.
people
Okay.
they've been through it. So
Love that. Cool. All right, we'll make sure we get everything in the notes so people can find you. So, excuse me. We always like to wrap up with the core values of this podcast, and those are strength, kindness, and perspective. So, is there someone that embodies those values? Someone that you would love to give a shout out to today?
yeah, my father, yeah, he came from a very tiny village in India without much, and got a PhD in biochemistry,
Wow.
and moved to the US in the mid 80s with, a young child, my older brother and his wife. And he had this combination of fierce work ethic, and he still does, and along with genuine softness toward people. Um, and he always told me, if you want to make a lot of money, it's always possible if you put your morals and ethics aside to do it quickly. And he never did that. And so I think that he never became bitter either, and he's never lost his curiosity. And so, particularly in the past year when he, went into septic shock, and he's recovering now, and his speech is difficult, and his walking his physical capability is difficult, and his life force got depleted. Seeing him go through that and continue to push and continue to laugh and smile and have humor and still be writing a book and still be doing these things and still reading science articles and sending them to me. So I think of him a lot when I feel myself hardening against the difficulty of life and work and people and relationships. Is if he's doing it, I can do it too.